Okay, so the last section of this chapter is 5.9, interpreting quadratic equations. Interpreting a quadratic equation roots, sorry. So we're going to solve for x in a quadratic equation. And we're going to look at the quadratic formula again. So remember, we do need the equations in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So when we did a word problem in the last section, we had two roots or two x values. But there are cases when you could have two solutions, one solution, or no solutions. So if you look at each of these equations, so a is 1 here, and this is b, and this is c. When you plug that in to the quadratic equation, you get two solutions. When you do b, like question b, a is 9, b is 6, and c is 1. You get one solution. The square root of 0 is 0. And then when you have this question here, there are cases when even the quadratic formula won't work to factor an equation or solve it. So because you can't have a negative root, like you can't do that, you're going to get no solution. Okay, so really, what determines it, if you look at these three cases here, is this, the square root, right? Square root of a number that works, square root of 0, which is 0, and then a square root of a negative number. So we call the expression underneath the square root sign, we call that the discriminant. So what's under the root sign, b squared minus 4ac, that is called the discriminant. So if we were in class, then I would give you the formula for the discriminant. You just would have to know the three different cases, okay? So if it's greater than 0, it would have two solutions. Equal to 0, and really greater, you could even just think of that as positive. Like a positive number. Equal to 0 has one solution, and then less than 0 has no solution or no roots, or if it's negative. Okay, so you just need to remember that a is the number out front of the x squared, b is the number out front of the x, and c is the number there at the end. So the discriminant b squared minus 4ac. You don't even have to worry about doing the square root part. All you're doing is looking at the number underneath. So 16 plus 28, negative 4 times negative 7, it makes positive 28, which is 44. So that is definitely greater than 0. So there are two roots, or it's positive. Then over here, so this is A, B, C. So 9 minus 72 is negative 63. So now that number is negative or less than 0. So there are no roots or 0 roots, which is fine. And A, B, C. So really, as long as you remember what's A and what's C and what's B, this is pretty straightforward. 16 minus 16 is 0. Because like I said, even if we were in class, I would give you the formula of the discriminant. You would just have to know how to use it. Equal to 0 is one root. Okay, so that's one thing we have to do, how we interpret the quadratic equations. Another one is, of course, word problems. So for these word problems, you're going to be given an equation. So here it is. And this one is gnarly, right? It's got decimals in it. So we are going to use the quadratic formula to solve, okay? So again, in the other lesson, I talked about how many of the quadratic equations, when you have to solve them, like in physics or whatever, has to do with motion. So we're going to use h for y, which is height, and t for x. So that is time. And if you think about, it's because when you have a graph, we always put time on the x, and then y is whatever we're measuring. So in this case, it's height. So how long would the rocket take to fall to Earth? Round your answer to 2 decimal places. So the ground, or Earth, is going to be the horizontal, which is 0 meters, horizontal height. So we want height to be 0. Sorry, I'll write that in there. The only annoying thing is it's difficult sometimes to tell the difference between t and a plus sign. So just be wary of that. Okay, and then so we are going to use the quadratic equation to solve. And usually I would tell you this, to be honest. And you would be given the formula for the quadratic equation. It's on the slide, the note in a previous slide, so we'll just keep going, okay? So it's up to you. You can just use x or you can use t. It doesn't matter. So negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So plus or minus the square root of 3,658.8, negative 9.8. So there, again, the 9.8 comes from the acceleration due to gravity. And then we have the 2 answers, right? We have the positive root and the negative root. Oops, sorry. And one of the answers has to be positive because time cannot be negative. So it takes 12.29 seconds to reach Earth. We can't use this one. No negatives. No negative time. So when you have a time question, again, a parabolic motion question, you should definitely have 1 positive value and 1 negative value. Okay, so over what time interval is the height of the toy rocket greater than 150? So if you think about an interval is like a range, which means you're going to have a range between 2 values. And so here, when we do this, that means that we should get 2 roots. Okay, so if you don't get 2 roots in this kind of question, then you know you've done something wrong. So this time we want the height to be at least 150. I'm going to try to squish. Sorry, I'm running out of room. You guys can keep writing on your paper. So when you bring the 150 over, because in order to use the quadratic equation, it has to be standard form, then the 150 turns into negative. So 3 minus 150 is negative 147. So now we have A, B, C. I'll try changing colors so you can see it a bit better. And I'm not gonna, this is the quadratic formula here. I'm not gonna write it again just to save room. Okay, so we have negative 60 plus or minus the square root of 60 squared minus 4 times 4.9 times negative 147. So 60 squared minus 4 times negative 4.9 times negative 147 is 718.8. So again, now we're going to do the 2. Oops, I forgot to do divide 9.8. I'm running out of room here, sorry. And then the other one, so you get 2 positive answers, which makes sense this time because remember, we're trying to find an interval. So we're trying to find the time between. So therefore, between 3.39 seconds and 8.86 seconds, the height's above is above 150. This is really the toughest type of question you could be asked. So, and not too bad, right? It would be probably more like A. But in the next unit, when we talk more about what's a parabola and what it means, you might have to do more with intervals. So really what this means is what you're going to see next unit is a parabola. Like if you throw something, then the parabola would look like this. So if this is 150 on the height, then here, these would be the 2 times. So instead of lines like you did in grade 9, we're going to do this shape, the next section, the next chapter, which is called a parabola. Okay, so work on this homework. There's a worksheet which has the discriminant stuff, and the questions from the textbook are word problems, and then the solutions for the worksheet are online. The textbook questions are online and on D2L, and work on the review for the assignment that's going to be posted. Okay, thank you.